How's it going, everybody? You may have heard last night there was rioting at Georgia Tech in Atlanta. Around 50 or so people were protesting, and then it turned violent. A cop car was burned. There were a few arrests. Some cops were injured. And this rioting is stemming from the shooting death of a student named Scout Schultz. So a few days ago, a video went kind of viral. We saw it reported far and wide. The student is seen approaching police, presumably carrying a knife. The cops yell things like, "Drop the knife," "We don't want to hurt you." Scout Schultz screams, "Shoot me."
Drop it. Shoot me. No, drop the knife. Drop the knife. Drop the knife.
Drop it.
The police say, "Don't move." Scout moves and then gets shot, and we hear the screaming. Scout Schultz died shortly after that. What we're learning now is that Scout Schultz has a history of depression, had attempted suicide before. The New York Times is reporting that Scout actually had suicide notes, and more importantly, Scout had called the police on themselves, claiming that a person was seen with a gun and a knife. So when the police responded with their weapons ready, Scout screamed, "Shoot me," approached them, and died. This incident is widely believed to be a suicide by cop incident. But regardless of that, it hasn't stopped people from criticizing the police department and even rioting. Many people are asking why the police were so quick to use deadly force against someone who was having a mental breakdown. They claim that the police should have used less lethal weapons or tasers. Why aren't the police equipped with tasers? And naturally, this resulted in people rioting. Following a vigil for Scout Schultz, around 50 or so people went protesting and then set a police car on fire, and there were a few injuries. This was not a very large riot, but it still resulted in news coverage because I think people are very on edge with a lot of the Antifa stuff that's been going on over the past several months. You know, Berkeley is coming up soon, and we've seen these protests and riot at college campuses, for the past year or so. So I think stories like this will continue to make headlines. So there's a few interesting things we can talk about. The first thing I want to address lightly is that following the shooting death of Scout, many people started posting photos with the Antifa flag on it, trying to insinuate that this person was crazy and that they were aligned with Antifa. And I think this is a bit disingenuous. People often want to paint their political opponents as crazy. There's nothing here to insinuate that this had anything to do with anti-fascist activism or rioting or violence. It was simply a mentally unwell person committing suicide by a cop. But when you look at this person's social media, you can see that they were actively following many far-left pages, Antifa, for instance, and Redneck Revolt, among many others. But simply because this person follows these pages does not mean they are a violent extremist or they're engaging in violence in any way. This story is simply a tragedy. So I wanted to lightly cover that, but let's move on and talk about some of the criticisms people have for the police. A lot of people are saying that the police should be equipped with less lethal weapons. And sure, I think there are many circumstances where the police should have something maybe a little bit more powerful than a taser or more accurate than a taser, but less likely to kill you. In this instance, people were saying, why couldn't the police just back away or use a taser? And I want to just say a few things. First, if someone is reported to be carrying a gun and a knife and they're on a campus, those police obviously want to make sure that the rest of the students are safe. We saw that a Georgia Tech Twitter account was tweeting, "Stay in your dorms, there is an incident on campus." They have to consider the safety of many other people because they don't know who this person with a knife is. They don't know what they're doing. Furthermore, there's a misconception that knives are less dangerous than guns. Certainly guns have a certain range where they are particularly dangerous, right? The average person isn't going to shoot more than, I think it's like 7 yards or so without training. But within this range, a knife is significantly more dangerous than a gun. Mythbusters did a really, really great episode where they talk about bringing a knife to a gunfight. Because in reality, bringing a knife to a gunfight is often smarter than a gun. In the episode, as well as many other training videos, they show that within about 20 feet, a knife is lethal and a gun is not.
A suspect with a knife can close 7 paces and deliver deadly force in less than 1 1/2 seconds.
Someone with a knife running full speed towards someone with a gun is going to deliver a fatal blow before that person can unholster their gun and take a shot. So when you have a student who is reported to be carrying a gun and a knife, the police need to take every precaution and make sure other students are safe. I recommend taking a look at some of these videos so you can better understand just how dangerous knives can be. You know, there's this trope in movies, or I think there's this famous scene in Star Trek where someone takes a knife and swings and they grab the hand and twist it and they drop the knife. But that's usually never how it happens. A single knife to the chest can kill you. They puncture a lung, they hit an artery or your heart. Knives are extremely dangerous. And a lot of people don't seem to understand that a small knife can be seriously dangerous too, because it's the puncture and the removal of the blade that will kill you. People have drawn comparisons to, say, the British police and machetes. A machete isn't going to puncture your lung. Yes, it can lacerate you and cause significant damage. You can bleed out, but there's different things to consider. Simply because a blade is bigger does not mean it is any more or less dangerous. So in this circumstance, it's a tragedy. I don't know what else could be done. For one, I'm not a cop. I don't know the appropriate response. But again, keep in mind, there are other students on this campus, and there's a person seen walking around with a knife, screaming, "Shoot me." The police, they have to do something to keep people safe. Now here's where it starts to get interesting. My sentiment is not unique. On Reddit, page 3 of all, which is very high, over 5,000 points visible. So the upvotes, I'm not sure how many upvotes they have. It might be around 5,500. Students at Georgia Tech calling out the rioters, saying that the riots do not represent the views of the students and that the students actually respect the police. The post reads, "Dear protesters, specifically those of you shouting, 'F the police.' You are a disgrace to this school, this city, and this country. You are violent animals using a tragic death as an excuse to act like such. Your voices are not being heard, only your stupidity. Of course, everyone has a right to voice whatever opinion they may have, but do not turn our campus into a battleground for your senseless war on order. What happened was a tragedy, and GTPD responded in the best way they could. It has since been revealed that the victim has called the police reporting that they had a gun with them as well. GTPD was incredibly tolerant, gave the person ample time to disarm themselves, comply with police, and end the situation calmly. This did not happen, unfortunately, and instead they continued to walk towards an officer, knife in hand, and reportedly with a gun. Dear GTPD, these protests do not voice the opinion of your school. We respect you and appreciate everything you do for us each and every day. The other night, one of your officers was presented with a nearly unimaginable situation. We understand the events that occurred and the unfathomable decision that had to be made. We love and support each and every one of you." Now, in this post, there's also a fundraiser for the injured police officers. Many of the comments on this post express a similar sentiment, that students feel freer and safer, that the Georgia Tech police are a model police force. Former students saying that when they were there, they felt that the GTPD were doing a fantastic job, and they have a ton of respect from the community. Too often we hear stories where somebody gets killed by a police officer, and the immediate response is to jump the gun and blame the police. The parents of Scout Schultz are saying, why didn't the police use a taser? Why didn't they have other less lethal means? And yes, I think there is a space for police to have maybe something stronger than a taser, but less lethal than a gun. There's been some videos where they talk about this device you can attach to a gun that makes the first round just an impact shot that won't penetrate. But at the end of the day, it's hard to imagine what it's like when you're confronted with the situation. A person walking through the streets carrying, at least apparently holding a knife, reportedly having a gun, screaming, "Shoot me." You can know that this person is maybe attempting a suicide by cop, but again, I said this a million times earlier, there's other people that you have to take care of, which is always strange to me, that the people on the far left who are protesting and rioting, who claim to be part of a collective or to believe in the collective security or communism or anarchy, often overlook the fact that in these situations, there are other people nearby to consider. It's impossible to imagine what these officers were dealing with. And a lot of people on the far left want to say that all cops are bastards, as the saying goes, ACAB, but that's just not true. Certainly there are a lot of cops who get away with things they should not get away with. Cops should be held to a higher standard. They're here to uphold the law, and they should be held to a higher standard than the average person because they are gifted with authority in these situations. But this is not one of those situations. This was a tragedy, and the rioters are taking advantage of the news about an intersex student, a trans student, who was shot and killed as a means to push some violent agenda. But what I can say is that it seems apparent that the students are not cool with this, and that most people are not cool with this. It's hard to say if protests will escalate. I'm not entirely sure, but based on posts like this, I don't think the students are going to get out and go to the defense of the rioters or join in any kind of protests like this. It seems like the rioting might be a one-off incident, and this may be the end of it. But let me know what you think. Comment below. It's a sad story, and it's sad to see that this is the response the protesters had, was to go out and get violent and start fires. The whole thing is just a tragedy. News is often so depressing. God, why does it have to be so depressing? If you like the video, click the like button. Yeah, again, comment below. We'll keep the conversation going. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Timcast. If you want to support my work, make sure you go to timcast.com/donate. Give whatever you'd like or give nothing at all. My videos are always free and available every day at 4 p.m. Stay tuned, because in the next week, I'll be traveling to Berkeley. Should Free Speech Week be taking place? We don't know. There's a lot of hoo-ha and flim-flam going on. Milo posted a couple videos saying that the university is holding them back, but we'll see what happens. Should this event take place, I will be there on the ground in Berkeley reporting live and producing videos just like this one. So stay tuned, and I will see you all then.